have a unique, Eric, we've got a unique guest.
So excited.
Who can say they went from the classroom to the former Secretary of Education in Virginia is with us today with connecting with our community members. So fascinating. So fascinating.
So happy to have you here with us.
Happy to be here, Eric and Nathaniel. Thank you so much for having me, and thank you for all you do for your service as educators.
Appreciate that.
Well, we appreciate that. Sometimes I don't feel like we do enough, Eric. I don't know about you, but sometimes I just don't feel like I can do enough. There's so much need out there. Right?
There's always more.
There's always
Our
more.
hearts are definitely in it.
So Atif, we have I love the connection. I mean, this is a community connection. I was the principal at Minnieville. You were a teacher at Bevel. There's a connection with Eric. Eric, you want to share your connection?
Yeah, we both ended up working for the same person. I opened up Fitzgerald Elementary School as their first assistant principal, and the person who was their principal, who was Doreen Simpson at the time, then went to work at Bevel with Mr. Qarni. And so we have that connection of leadership. And I appreciate Doreen. Doreen, if you're listening, I appreciate you, and you certainly helped me along my journey get to where I am. So Doreen, I appreciate you.
Love it. I love it. So Atif, you were a classroom teacher. Let's start this because you have a fascinating story. And I think you were a civics teacher, correct?
That's right. I taught pre-algebra and civics and economics.
Wow.
That's a lot of preps.
So share a little bit about, it is a lot of preps, right? So share a little bit about your journey to education and then going from the classroom to the State House, man, the Secretary of Education in Virginia.
Yeah, so I decided to go into education around like 2004-ish or so. My wife and I had just settled in Prince William, and we had just one kid at that time, and so I did my master's at George Mason to finish up my degree and get my teaching license, and then started teaching in 2008. And enjoyed every moment of it. So I taught for nearly a decade before I was appointed Secretary of Education. But why did I go into teaching is my mother was a special education teacher, my grandfather was a professor and a teacher, and my grandmother from another side was also a teacher and a school principal. So I just have a lot of educators in my family who are really good role models, and I just believe that's the best form of service to society. So that's why I went into education.
So you were in the military, is that right?
I was in the Marines from 96 to 04. I was enlisted. I was in the reserves. I did some active time, so I was deployed to Iraq during Operation Iraqi Freedom.
Wow. Thank you. Yeah, thank you for your service. That's awesome. Semper Fi, brother. Semper Fi.
Yeah.
So how did you get from the classroom to being the Secretary of Education?
Yeah, I think Governor Northam, who had just won his governorship, I think he just drew a name out of the hat. No, I'm just joking there. Of the 100.
And the winner is Atif Qarni. Yay!
Right. I'm like, how do I say this name? No, I was you all are familiar with Prince William County, and it's light years ahead of where it was a decade plus ago, right? With the recession, there was a lot of cut in education funding. We were seeing the deep impact of it. I just saw a lot of inequities. Teaching at Bevel, it broke my heart that just the children didn't have the resources that they really deserved. So I got involved in education advocacy. I ran for office, and then just started to organize because I learned that in order to get your voice heard, you have to really bring people together and get the community behind you to advocate, and that's really important. Really building those community connections. So it's not just up to the teachers, right? We're on the front lines as educators, fighting for our children, fighting for our communities. But I think that it's also important to get the churches involved and different civic associations involved. So when Governor Northam was running, I was supporting him. He had asked, "Hey, I hear that you're organizing in Prince William. You care a lot about education." So I did a lot of roundtables and town halls about education issues when he was running. So when he wins, a lot of the folks from different organizations, a lot of grassroots folks actually wrote to him saying that, can you please consider Atif to be Secretary of Education? we didn't think, I mean, I just had no idea that that would ever happen. I didn't even know what Secretary of Education was until he won. I started looking, and I'm like, hey, this is the top position that has control over all the policy making, right?
Mm.
Yep.
Of education. So it's just very fortunate that he made that decision. He said, okay, let's do it. I want to teach her right out of the classroom. It's never been done in Virginia. It'll be a fun little experiment. So he went for it. Yeah, that's how
That's
it happened.
awesome. So you get the call, you have the assembly.
Mhm.
After that, like, shock and awe wear off, now you have to do the job. So
Yeah.
how did you figure out what to prioritize now that you're in? So now you've gone from working for Tim and D-Rain and the admin and the
Mm.
Prince William County staff. So now you're like over all of us. How do you wrap your mind around that? How did you figure out what kinds of things in your new position you wanted to prioritize?
Yeah, there were so many things, Eric. I mean, what one thing I knew is that this is a once in a life opportunity and I can't mess it up because
Yeah.
I don't want to mess it up that for future folks who are in the classroom want to create a good precedent that it becomes a norm that you take a classroom teacher and appoint them. So there was a lot of pressure and I took that, it was very, very important. Another thing I kept in mind is that there was, yes, there was a sense of urgency to do a lot of things.
Yep.
But I wanted to do them right because there was I wanted to make sure what my why was. Why did I go into education in the first place, and who am I representing? So I took things slow because it was drinking out of a fire hose. So the first year, I really surrounded myself with a lot of experts from the field and also folks in Richmond and just listened
Mm.
and absorbed a lot of information and learned the nuances of how to really change policy and budget. From day one, when I took an oath, the very first thing I requested is to sit down with the Department of Planning and Budget. And it's this big, right? It's a $19 billion budget. And I'm like, look, folks, give me all the time, and it took days to go through everything. I said, I want to comb through everything. I really, truly want to understand how is money spent in K-12 and higher ed. And it was an important exercise to really learn about everything. So the first year was laying the groundwork, but not doing too much. Second year is when I became very assertive, and because we laid a foundation, and then boom, 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 a lot of good stuff happened. And I think that's one of the things I did, right? I did a lot of things wrong, but I think one of the things was to really understand our systems to see how to bring about change.
Well, let's talk about what you did right and what you did wrong. So what was one thing, Atif, that you were exceedingly proud of? And what was one thing that if you had that magic go back in time button, you would do that way differently. So what are your thoughts on that?
So I was proud of a lot of good work. We were able to expand preschool significantly. With K-12, we were able to get a record number of school counselors and English language teachers hired. We were able to get overall salary increases for SOQ positions, as you know, at 15%. But that gets watered down at the local level, as you all know how that works. Was proud of all the different task forces to create more of a culturally inclusive setting, look at trauma-informed practices, really, dig deep into that. And then in higher ed too, because it's one of the things I realized, because I came from such a K-12 thing and we were looking at, we have a very siloed approach. But it was cool to kind of connect the dots, and we were able to do a lot in higher education with need-based financial aid and establishing free community college. A lot of good work. The things that I, obviously navigating this through the pandemic, the last 2 years we had to navigate the pandemic. I think one of the things that, if I were to go back and do it, and I don't know how to do that, is that I wish I knew more about policy, because we know as educators, as practitioners, we live and breathe this every day, and we're deeply impacted by it. And I just don't know how, but I wish just knew more and more, because there are definitely some policies that I could have dug deeper in and done more of, whether it's related to STEM. Later on in the administration, I started to dig deeper with the STEM council we created. I think it was a little too late because the pandemic also hit. So I kind of missed the boat a little bit in that first year learning the system. There were some things that I just really missed the boat on. Like we were able to really revamp our accreditation system because that was handed off from the prior administration, but there were components within that with social emotional learning, with STEM and others that, you know, it just we could have done. I know I could have done a little bit better digging deeper.
You did fine. You did a great job. You did a
Yeah,
great
we're
job.
educators where we have high standards, man. You know?
Always,
Like
it's
that.
always like what's what's next? Could have done this better.
There's always
Yeah,
more.
yeah.
Yeah, that's
So
interesting.
what do you think should be just the world changes so fast, right? Politically and nationally and in education, there's constant changes going on. What do you think? So if you could talk to our current Virginia Secretary of Education or our national, what are some things you think they should be prioritizing right now?
Yeah, I mean, I think they should be prioritizing children, putting politics aside and really looking at the needs of children and who impacts that and affects the most is a classroom teacher and the support systems, right?
Yep.
So priorities should be on addressing the shortages we have. Why do we have these shortages with teacher and support staff? Is because one, salary. I keep hammering that in because we really need a national minimum, the cost of living adjustment. I mean, Prince William is pretty expensive to live in, and as you all know, there's a lot of educators who don't live in Prince William County. They can't afford to live in Prince William County, right? Or it's not even just teachers, right? It's nurses or police officers and so forth. So I think we really, have to respect the profession by paying it more, and that quality of life is important for that educator too. And then also just respecting the profession with given more autonomy with appropriate accountability, but more autonomy. I think we have suffocated the system with No Child Left Behind. I know ESSA tried to clean it up a little bit, but I really think that at the national level, to your second part of the question, the Secretary of Education at the national level and the U.S. Department of Ed need to completely revamp our system and look at how we do accreditation meaningfully, where it really prioritizes creative thinking and critical thinking skills and really puts that. We talk about it, there's a lot of lip service, but the way the actual accreditation is done and the MOUs are set up with the state, it's not there. It's still antiquated.
Yep. It reminds me just of how we measure things. Because if we're measuring, like, how's a dance program, we're going to watch them dance. Music program, we will listen to a chorus. Science program, they're going to take a multiple choice test.
Right.
So if we had more latitude of measuring how you succeed as a mathematician or a scientist, then maybe we would be able to practice those skills differently in our schools.
Right. More project-based learning, right? I mean, and we have great models, like IB is a great model. If you do true STEM integration, STEM is not just math and sciences alone, right? It's the way of thinking and building. I know one of your questions talks about, what kind of book and stuff. And when you had that question, there's a book I had read a while ago called like Lifelong Kindergarten, which is really focuses on creative thinking. Think about how we were in kindergarten or early years. There was a fun of learning. There was a lot of building and hands-on learning and creativity, and it just gets suffocated over the years, right? Why is it many children, I hear this complaint all the time for friends and family still, is that especially in high school, children are just, they're disconnected from school, and our educators are trying, right? Our educators are not the issue. They're trying to make learning fun and use creativity. It's our systems that have really suffocated that creativity. We really need to unleash that, and find different ways of measuring performance.
I agree. I think so. I have this little thing that I keep saying is like teachers teach how they were taught, leaders lead how they were led. And there is just like this generational like cycle that we just keep on doing the same things in the same ways for generations. It's almost like, Atif, that we still have this one-room schoolhouse mentality that we just can't break ourselves from because that's what we're comfortable with. It's almost like Stockholm syndrome. Like we're like in love with what we're used to, even though it's not the best for all kids. So you're the Secretary of Ed, you're innovative, you're creative, you're passionate. No one knows the front line like you do. And you've got this idea that you want to push through. What's in your way?
just antiquated way of thinking. Like we're in like, folks who are not connected to the classroom. And it's not necessarily you know the educational leaders, right?
Mhm.
It's not necessarily them, because there's a lot of very creative superintendents and school board members who, do spend time and listening.
Yeah.
It's just our politics gets in the way. Folks who are making the ultimate decisions, but policy making,
Mm.
the rapid change is always it creates a lot of anxiety, and
Mm.
it did. I mean, you saw with I think that with the pandemic, there was a lot of frustrations in general, but what it did is also this education became a wedge issue, and everything got politicized from.
Everything.
Yeah, and I'm not even talking about the model policies with transgender students or history standards, right? Math initiatives got, we were attacked for looking at creative math initiatives where literally there was a subcommittee of the top mathematicians. We have some brilliant mathematicians in Virginia,
Mm.
and they were proposing that, hey, can we look at our math pathways, and it's really outdated, and can we introduce more data sciences, and can it be more statistics balanced versus more calc, because in practical world, that's where the need is. Just that conversation alone got hijacked and politicized. How is that?
Wow.
That's what we were seeing. But I know that's an extreme example of politicization, but in general, going back to it, even before the pandemic, the biggest barrier was building that understanding. And I was able to succeed because, I kept reminding elected officials that, hey, I am coming right from the classroom. And they did respect that.
Sure.
We were able to get a lot of meaningful work done, but we just still have a lot to do. And the other barrier is funding. We can't beat around the bush. I know this is one of your questions, but we don't even adequately fund education to even try some of these creative things, because it doesn't, the standards of quality are completely underfunded. And at the state level, the question you were asking, any Secretary of Education in any administration at the state level should be prioritizing fully funding those, because with resources, you're allowed to do more things also. So
Yep.
it's like there's an intersectionality of both. So we can't ignore that either.
Yeah.
So for that teacher, I know as a former teacher, you can sometimes think your admin team is out of touch with the demands of the classroom. And those principals, Nathaniel was my former area associate, I can think sometimes he's out of touch. And he might see the next level's out of touch. And then all of us might see state leadership as out of touch. So as we've been talking, you had such a unique perspective going right from the classroom. So for our listeners, how do you see all of those levels intertwined? How would a teacher know that the people at the state level have an understanding of what they need to succeed? What's that interconnectivity between all of those levels in education?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. The individual classroom teacher, is so busy with planning activities. It's not a 8 to 4, 8 to 3, 9 to 5 job. You take your work home with you, thinking about this concept, because you are literally have a responsibility to mold young minds, right?
Correct.
In an amazing way, and inspire them to do whatever in their journey. So that's what every teacher thinks about all the time. So I think it's not the classroom teacher's responsibility to necessarily try to figure out, hey, those systems that are working to impact that, how do I navigate and figure it out? I think it's the other way around, is where the policymakers on down need to be more intentional. So one of the things I propose to the General Assembly is that, folks, none of you have actually, I would say 99% of you probably never been a classroom teacher. A few might have many years ago. So take some time and go and substitute in a classroom, or sit down with educators and listen and observe, so you stay fresh with ideas. Because they do that as policymakers, when they're making decisions about businesses and factories, they go and they listen. So I think there just needs to be more engagement from policymakers to stay, get that fresh feedback. And some of them do it, most don't. I didn't see most of them doing that. So I'm like, hey, please try to do that.
Mm.
Not only meet with superintendents, right? Because superintendents are able to make the time and go down to Richmond or go meet with their state legislators, but meet with actual teachers
Yep.
Mm.
as much as possible, so you can get fresh ideas and fresh perspectives, and teachers will love it, right? And just
Oh
go
yeah.
down and listen to them. So even with my thing, like, that's why I was in schools a lot, because I didn't want to get rusty and wanted
Yep.
those fresh ideas. And a lot of the policy thinking and making came from the field.
Yeah.
So that's really important. It's really on the policymakers, I would say.
That's
I
great.
genuinely appreciate that perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. I understand that when you have I mean, it's a political appointment, it's a political position, but you weren't the Secretary of Education for Democrats, right? You were the Secretary of Education for Republicans, Democrats,
Everyone.
non-voters,
Everyone.
everybody. So how do you, this is a weird question, Atif. How do you remain kind of like steadfast and loyal to your political beliefs, right? But yet still have the opportunity to serve everybody. How do you even go about that? And I think that's something that's missing in politics, is that we forget that we serve everybody regardless of our political viewpoints, right? So I'm just curious what your thoughts on that.
So I think so. Running for office and campaigning is very different than governing, because when you're in, you have to represent everyone. You have to listen to everyone, right? And so that was very important to me. So I actually went to all of the 133 counties and cities in Virginia that wanted to make a point to do, and visited 400 of the 1,800 schools.
Wow.
But but the very first school I went to, and it was by design, is Elydale Elementary in Lee County, which is the furthest out school in Virginia. Like, it's literally on the tip, to make a point that I'm here to listen to everyone. I spent as much time in rural Virginia as I did in Hampton Roads, as in Nova, everywhere, right? To really listen and build relationships. And actually that helped with the navigating the pandemic. Was very, really tough because it was really politicized, but it was those community members and those superintendents and educators. They're like, sorry that you're getting attacked for whatever stuff, but also, like, one of the things is that during the pandemic, we couldn't have a one size fit all approach, even with CDC guidelines.
Yep.
Some of these rural settings where they can do social distancing much easier, you had to modify the guidelines, as opposed to a very concentrated area like a Fairfax, right? You can't have that approach. And that's what bothered me, but folks would politicize, where I'm seeing people in Bristol or whatever going back to school, they're all going to die. I'm like, no, they can spread out. Let them do their thing. Let's not politicize it. It was not just a politicization from the right wing of unmasking and so forth. It was going back and forth, right?
Yep.
And that's the thing, is I think this is where education is a beautiful system, is where practitioners have the ability to bring everybody together, all the different perspectives together, and rise above the fray, and and just don't get bogged down with attacks and stuff. It can be hurtful, but you just kind of rise above, because there's literally where lives are at stake, and people are really trying to do a lot. And just if you talk to the superintendents down in Southwest, they still love they hey, we miss you, Atif. It's about politics. We all want the same thing.
Yep, that's right.
Part of the state we're in, every family wants the same thing for their children.
Yep.
Educator wants the same thing for their children they teach and serve. So
I think that's the challenge, is there's a lot of noise at the wings, and I think there's a lot of agreement in the middle there. And unfortunately, we just have a lot of noise coming from the margins, when we need to focus so much better on what's going on, and where so many of us find common ground. Like you said, it is educating, and our children, we want them to be successful.
Yeah, absolutely. So now I guess then you get the call that, hey, you know what, your time as Secretary of Education is kind of gone. It's kind of run its course. do you go back to the classroom? What is this like? You're here. It's like you went to the moon. Like what's next, you know?
Yeah. So, yeah, the appointment ended 4 years. It was a 4-year term. So I got a lot of offers. I went and for a little bit and remote. It was remote work, so I managed a center on college affordability.
Hmm.
Because to learn more about higher ed, it was based out of Temple, a research center. But then I also became a professor at Mason to stay fresh, to go back to the classroom.
Oh, right on. Yeah.
As an adjunct. I mean, and in our K-12 setting, this is another thing, is that if we have more flexible options, and I'm not talking about substitute options, I'm talking about adjunct options to teach different courses and give more flexibility, you would see a lot more people also address some of these positions, like especially in mathematics or something, for example, like with AP Math, you have to have a master's to teach. And that's one of the things that we haven't really, fixed yet. But yeah, I became a professor because I love teaching. It's really energizing.
That's awesome. That's
yeah.
great. And so you're looking to maybe get back into politics. Is that what I understand?
Yeah. So the politics was not in my. It never was the first time. Like 11 years ago when I got involved, it was out of frustration, and even this time around running for Congress, it was not even on my radar. Because I am finishing my dissertation at Vanderbilt. I'm defending in July, and I have a couple of.
Good luck.
Yeah, thank you. I know you all have. So you got two good mentors here, right? So
one good mentor.
Yeah. So you both are, yeah. But okay, you know what I mean. So there is it was not in the stars. I am, focused on that, and my ultimate goal was to, hey, let's become a college president, do a complete shift, get my dissertation, and be a thoughtful education leader. And was receiving a couple of offers already, like lining up. I'm working with some of the universities. So Congresswoman Wexton, she has Parkinson's, so she stepped down. And because I've been working on a lot of different policies at the federal level now with education, I'm like, hey, why not? Let's give it a try. I have a pretty good network. If it happens, it happens. Let's give it a shot. So it's another way to serve.
Yeah. That's outstanding. Your story, Atif, about it really typifies servant leadership. You have a humble heart. You have a servant leader heart. This is, I could be wrong. I'm just going from what I know of you. And I just wish more politicians were like you. People before everything else is really what we're missing. So I really want to thank you for bringing your, not only that experience to the forefront, but you brought Bevel with you. You brought Del City with you. You're bringing Virginia with you. You're bringing Pakistan with you. You're bringing your family with you. And I think that sometimes we, when we're leaders, it's not just about us. It's, we're propped up by everyone that's been in our lives. So thank you, sir, for doing that.
No, thank you, Nathaniel. That's so kind of you. And I think that every educator is like that, right? It's in our DNA to serve, and we're community minded. And I know one of your questions asked about, what kind of a feedback you give to educators, is that my thing is that we already do so much, but it's okay to engage politically and express your opinions. And it's not just through like the unions and stuff. That's a great route, but just on your own, right? Like engage, ask questions, go to school board, run for office if you have the ability to do so, because we don't have a lot of educators in politics, right? That's why I think the policy making, we have a lot of lawyers, but we don't have that perspective, because educators, are not wealthy, and it takes a lot of resources, but kind of start gradually. And if we have more educators entering these arenas of policy making, then I believe we'll see a better world.
Man, I'm fired up. I think I'm going to run for president.
I know.
Let's do it.
Let's do it. You got my vote.
Well,
Cool.
yeah, I'd do
Yeah.
like a third party kind of like something.
That's,
You know?
that's fine. Vote the individual, not the party, right?
That's right.